Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel. I'm a general physician. Today we'll be discussing on one of the very interesting topic and it will be very useful to you in your everyday practice because you will come across a person with chest pain in your everyday practice and how to differentiate ischemic, non-ischemic, cardiac, non-cardiac. It belongs to thoracic area or it is because of non-thoracic area, etc. We'll be discussing on that aspect, clinical side, how you approach to a person with a chest pain. So everyone is worried because the most common and important organ we considered as a heart. So any person who gets a chest pain is always worried whether it is a cardiac or non-cardiac. So always a person is worried for that and you have to identify more often clinically rather than you need an investigation because a person who has got an acute MI will need to treat as early as possible because the window period is very small. So you have to identify very fast and very early to prevent the morbidity and mortality. So you try to find out clinically it belongs to which group. So we'll be discussing under different headings, that is introduction, etiology, and case discussions. So we'll be going through those particular things. And then in subsequent part, we'll be discussing on how you differentiate chest pain case. So by definition, a broad term, any pain in the chest region is called chest pain, like thoracic cage, chest, whether it is anterior or posterior or axillary region, it is above the diaphragm and below the clavicle. So it is inside the thoracic cage. So that particular is given a name chest pain. But we are always worried whether it is because of the chest wall, it is because of the extra thoracic conditions like gallbladder, stomach, pancreas, we call extra thoracic causes, lung, heart, pericardium, esophagus, etc. We want to find out it is due to what. So basically we divide into two big groups. We call cardiac and non-cardiac. So if the pain, chest pain is because of cardiac, we usually put them into different groups. We call stable angina, troponin negative angina, or we call unstable angina, non-STEMI and STEMI. Now these three together, that is unstable angina, non-STEMI and STEMI, becomes acute coronary syndromes. So these are most important groups which we always are interested in identifying. At the same time, we should be very much sure that it belongs to this group or it does not belong to this group. And which does not belong to this group are non-cardiac. But in a non-cardiac also, there are some conditions which are very dangerous one. We call life-threatening. That also you should be able to identify very early so that you can prevent mortality. Like dissection of aorta or dissecting aneurysm, pulmonary embolism, pneumothorax, particularly tension pneumothorax, esophageal rupture, cardiac tamponade. These are some of the conditions which can be very dangerous one. So causes we divide into cardiac and non-cardiac, or we say thoracic and extrathoracic. You can use those words. As far as cardiac is concerned, angina, which can be stable, unstable, MI can be STEMI, non-STEMI. And as far as the other cardiovascular condition is concerned, we call aortic dissection. It is either the dissection of an aorta or dissecting aneurysm. Odd conditions like myocarditis, pericarditis. Non-cardiac group will be pleura, lung, which can be pulmonary infarct, pleurisy, pneumothorax, pneumonia, bronchogenic carcinoma, etc. GI tract like gastroesophageal reflux, esophageal spasm, hiatus hernia, malignancy, Mallory-Weiss syndrome, Bohrev syndromes, etc. Chest wall, like because of cough, muscular pain, intercostal muscle strain, myositis, herpes zoster, viral pleurodynia, thoracic radiculopathy, rib fracture, rib tumors, costochondritis, etc. These are all those we call as non-cardiac group. Pleura, GI tract, these are all non-cardiac group. Even these extrathoracic structures, acute abdomen, liver abscess, pancreatitis, post-herpetic neuralgia, and hysterical, all those belongs to extrathoracic group. While all these together becomes a thoracic group. But out of this, the most dangerous one is this group. Unstable angina and STEMI, non-STEMI. We usually put them together into one group we call it acute coronary syndrome, aortic dissection, then pulmonary infarct, tension pneumothorax, Mallory-Weiss or Bohrev syndromes, and among extrathoracic group, pancreatitis, liver abscess, etc. can be a dangerous one. So try to find out those particular groups which can produce a chest pain. So again, the same way we divide into cardiac, non-cardiac. Among non-cardiac, GERD, hiatus hernia, pulmonary, these are all the group, out of which pneumothorax, pulmonary embolism, aortic dissection, pancreatitis, liver abscess rupture, etc. can be dangerous one. Can be dangerous one. While among cardiac group, we call as a unstable angina, non-STEMI and STEMI, that is acute coronary syndrome. These three groups becomes a risky one. And among non-ischemic cardiac groups, particularly aortic dissection, or even we can call that as aortic aneurysm dissection, rupture of aortic aneurysm can be a life-threatening conditions. So these are all life-threatening conditions. Acute MI, acute coronary syndrome, which includes unstable, STEMI, non-STEMI, aortic dissection, tension pneumothorax, rarely extensive bilateral pneumonias, pulmonary embolism, ruptured esophagus, perforated ulcer, cardiac tamponade, pulmonary hypertension, myocarditis. These are not common, but once in a while they can be a dangerous one. So these are some of the conditions which you should be able to identify clinically because they can present as acute chest pain. So most important part in a chest pain is a history. And when you are taking a history, first you have to differentiate between ischemic, or we call as a cardiac chest pain, from a non-cardiac chest pain. And it is quite simple. If you go properly, it becomes very easy. Because ischemic chest pain is usually retrosternal or in a precordial region. While non-cardiac chest pain can be in any area, and it is usually we call as a pinpointing or localized. Good number of times. There is a radiation invariably in a ischemic heart disease, like radiating to the shoulder, inner side of the arm, particularly left shoulder, left side, inner side of the arm up to the tip of the little finger, maybe radiating to the neck, jaw, maybe occasionally radiating retrosternal back into the lower down into epigastrium, or very rarely interscapular region. While usually in a non-cardiac, there is hardly any radiation. Character wise, in ischemic heart disease, it is usually squeezing in character, heaviness, suffocating sensation, tight choking sensation, etc. While in a non-cardiac, usually it is stabbing, sharp, pin pricking, something is catching inside. Those are the common varieties which are being described in a non-cardiac chest pain. Among precipitating factor, exertion, emotion, heavy meals, anxiety, etc. are the precipitating factor. While in a non-cardiac, spontaneous or may be associated with cough, movement of chest wall. It is usually not related to exertion. It is provoked by different postures. It is increased by deep inspiration, expiration, or you can get even a tenderness on palpation. Relieving factor, in case of unstable angina, it is relieved by rest and relieved by nitrates. But in a case of unstable angina and STEMI, non-STEMI, usually it is not relieved by rest and not relieved by nitrates. Why? Non-cardiac chest pain is not relieved by rest, and sometimes you may get a partial response by nitrates. That means in a case of a lower esophageal problems, you may have a partial response because of nitrates. This is one condition you must remember. Among associated features in cardiac, particularly we call as an acute MI, maybe STEMI, maybe non-STEMI. Person invariably complains of breathlessness, dyspnea, shortness of breath, we call, or may be associated with hypotension, tachycardia, tachypnea, cyanosis, etc. Profuse perspiration, nausea, vomiting. While in case of a non-cardiac chest pain, depending upon which organ is involved, accordingly the symptom may be there. Maybe having what we call as a respiratory symptoms or GI tract symptoms like nausea, vomiting, burning sensation aggravated by food or by vomiting, etc. This you should be able to differentiate between these two big groups. So clinically only you should be able to identify whether this is more likely to be ischemic or less likely to be ischemic. And you should ask all these questions: onset, duration, site, character, severity, radiation, aggravating factor, precipitating factor, relieving factor, associated symptoms. Then you go for a history, family history, personal history, look out for risk factors, and last is investigation like ECG, troponin, CPK-MB. So those are the way, or you can go for a angio studies. So these are the questions you have to ask and you have to fill in the blanks. So by and large, by asking those questions, you should be able to. There is another way of asking a question we call as a Socrates. Site, onset, character, radiation, associated symptom, timing, exacerbation and relieving factor and severity. Usually by and large everyone is using this. This is a very simple way of asking all the question and fill in the blanks. Now suppose if a person is having an acute coronary syndrome, what will be the classical features? Almost unstable angina, MI, maybe STEMI or maybe non-STEMI. Clinically almost symptoms remain nearly same. There is a very minor difference in all this group. So we are always interested in identifying that and differentiating that from a stable angina. Now in a case of a stable angina, chest pain is on the left side, precordial region. Onset is always sudden, but it is always on exertion. While in a case of a acute coronary syndrome, it can occur at rest. Character is usually dull aching pain or burning pain, sense of doom, heaviness, someone is sitting, person finds difficulty in breathing, tightness, etc. These are different descriptions. Radiation is there both in stable angina as well as unstable angina. Radiation is in both the condition. It can radiate to left arm or it can radiate to right arm, more commonly to the left shoulder, and then the arm all along the inner side up to the little finger, may radiate to the neck, to the jaw, even may radiate retrosternal to the epigastrium and sometime in the interscapular region posteriorly. Very frequent it is associated with sweating, nausea, vomiting, breathlessness and palpitation, which is more common in acute coronary syndrome, while in a stable angina these are very rare. Sweating, nausea, vomiting, dyspnea, palpitation, cyanosis, hypotension, tachypnea, tachycardia, those are less in case of a stable angina. As far as timing is concerned, in acute coronary syndrome, it is usually longer lasting and not relieved by rest. While in a stable angina, it is usually lasting for 5 to 10 minutes and it is relieved by rest or relieved by nitroglycerin. As far as the exaggerating factor is concerned, in acute coronary syndrome, it can be even at rest, exaggerated by exercise, anxiety, heavy meals, extreme cold weather, etc. can aggravate. Relieving factor wise, in unstable angina may be relieved partially by nitroglycerin or may not be relieved by nitroglycerin. Severity wise, it is very severe pain in acute coronary syndrome, while in a stable angina, usually severity wise, the person says mild to moderate. And you try to look for the risk factors. Identify the risk factors like smoking, alcohol, excessive weight, obesity, then hyperlipidemia, all those. Try to identify those conditions. And the typical description, the person will be holding the chest like this. This is called Levine's sign. So very peculiar, and you try to identify those particular group of people. So this is the area where you can get a pain. It can radiate to the retrosternal, to the neck region, to the left shoulder, down to the epigastrium, inner side of the arms, jaw, right up to tip of the little finger, and interscapular region. Even it can radiate up to jaw also. So right up to jaw and inner side up to the little finger. This is on the front side, this is on the back side. You can have a pain radiating even in a back interscapular region. We already told you, aggravated by exertion, emotion, large meal, cold weather, unstable angina can be at rest, and some angina can also occur by supine posture, we call decubitus angina. Usually this is very common with aortic regurgitation and even a heavy meal. May be associated with dizziness, shortness of breath, nausea, vomiting, sweating, profuse perspiration. So sweating, nausea, vomiting, breathlessness, cough, and sometimes person even get a wheeze because of a acute left ventricular failure. Basal crackles may be seen. So now, how you go to those particular group of people? Based is history, look for vital data. In good number of person, we always say unstable, meaning tachycardia, hypotension, tachypnea, cold clammy extremities. Have a good general examination, cardiovascular system examination, and respiratory system examination. Very frequently, the person who comes to you with a severe chest pain, what we have described before, a classical chest pain with unstable, are very frequently acute MI or maybe belonging to acute coronary syndrome, which can be unstable, maybe STEMI, non-STEMI. STEMI, non-STEMI. STEMI is acute MI, can be non-STEMI or STEMI. So these two common groups we should be able to identify. And also keep it in mind, such type of presentation can be there in an aortic dissection. There's a little different type of presentation. Tension pneumothorax, pulmonary embolism, perforated ulcer, ruptured esophagus, etc. These are all we call as a life-threatening, where usually the person is unstable. So always keep it in mind. If someone comes with a unstable and he has got a chest pain, first possibility, always rule out MI and acute coronary syndrome. But also keep it in mind, aortic dissection, tension pneumothorax, pulmonary embolism. Among respiratory, these are the two. Among the artery, aortic dissection or rupture of aortic aneurysm. And among GI tract, ruptured esophagus we call as a Borev syndrome, or you can have a Mallory-Weiss syndrome, perforated ulcer. These are among GI tract. Do keep it in mind. If you want to rule out very early, first thing what you will require is an EKG, which will give you almost a very good diagnosis of MI or STEMI or non-STEMI, and it will also help you to rule out unstable angina. and it is further helped by troponin, CPKMB, and if required, echo, followed by a angiography, which may be combined with MRI, CT angio or MRI angio. So this should be the way you should approach in any person who comes to you with a chest pain. So you can differentiate what we call as unstable angina, STEMI and non-STEMI from other groups. These are the investigation which you will require, and it should be as early as possible. It should be done. So whenever a person is unstable, think of any one of these groups. So in a person where you have got a clinical clue which is suggestive of an acute coronary syndrome, and you are sure that it is acute coronary syndrome, and on ECG you get an ST elevation, straightforward person should be subjected to treatment for acute MI. If there is a non-ST elevation, then either there are two possibilities. Either person is non-STEMI with stable or unstable. If troponin is positive, hemodynamically unstable, treat same way like an acute MI. And if there is no diagnosis on ECG and there is a normal troponin initially, then we put that it is a possible acute coronary syndrome. You have to rule out whether it is acute coronary or it is something else like unstable angina. Then in that case, you will have to observe for a few hours, repeat an ECG. If there is no recurrent pain, have a follow-up study. You can go for, if there is no chest pain for a long period and troponin remains negative, then you can go for a stress test. You can go for a stress echo to rule out ischemic groups. And if it is still negative, look for all the risk factors and treat him accordingly. But if there is a recurrent chest pain, troponin becomes positive, diagnosis of acute coronary syndrome is confirmed, and you will have to admit to a hospital and treat as an acute MI. So that is how we approach. In a person with a chronic stable angina, usually they are tackled with what we call as a pharmacotherapy, and if required, you can go for investigations like stress test, TMT, echo, stress echo, or you can even go for a angio and then decide what further treatment you can give if they don't respond to pharmacotherapy. And if it is not fitting with acute coronary syndrome clinically and it is a non-cardiac diagnosis, treat depending upon the etiology. So this is the normal protocol we usually follow. Same thing explained in a different pattern, same thing what has been shown in a previous. So first you have to confirm the diagnosis of acute coronary syndrome, and if there is an ST elevation, you will have to undergo medical therapy with PCI or for CABG depending upon what type of damage it is. If it is a possible observation troponin positive ST elevation, then again you go for an angiography, either medical therapy, that is we call thrombolysis with medical therapy, and followed by PCI or CABG depending upon that. If it is a typical angina, usually a typical angina or a typical angina, you will have to follow up, have a pharmacotherapy. If not responsive, you will have to go for an angio and then decide. You can go for an exercise test, LV function test, etc. and then decide whether the angiography is necessary or not, and then for medical therapy or PCI or CABG. And if it is a non-cardiac, depending upon the cause, treatment. Now suppose you got a 12 lead ECG, there is an ST elevation. This is what you go for. If ECG is strongly suspicion of ischemic heart disease, then you have to observe, and then if there are changes which appears, you go for. Non-diagnostic ECG, you observe. If there is an ischemia, again transfer to ICU. If there is no evidence of ischemia, discharge and go for follow-up. Now ischemic heart disease group we usually divide into two big groups, stable and we call as acute coronary syndrome. Acute coronary syndrome is usually because of a plaque rupture, which may be because of stress, sudden shoot up of hypertension, etc. In that, we come across what is called MINOCA, that is myocardial infarction because of non-occlusive coronary artery disease, in which angiography study may be normal. It may not show you the occlusion of the coronary artery. It is because of the small blood vessels which are being occluded. And another group which you come across is unstable angina, non-STEMI and STEMI. In STEMI you get an ST elevation, while in unstable angina and non-STEMI you get an ST depression, which is more than 1 or 2 small square and persist. And in non-STEMI you get troponin and CPK-MB positive, while in unstable angina troponin and CPK-MB are negative. While in MINOCA you get troponin positive. There is no ST elevation. There is ST elevation. Sorry, there is ST elevation. There is troponin positive, but angiography study shows you non-occlusion coronary artery disease, means occlusion is less than 50%, and usually it is because of a small blood vessel involvement. While in case of a stable angina, you come across what we call as a stable angina. Usually in that, troponin is always negative, CPK-MB is negative. The pain is lasting for 10 to 15 minutes, usually for 5 to 10 minutes, very rarely longer lasting. Relieved by rest, relieved by nitroglycerin, and by giving a pharmacotherapy, person usually gets a good results. You can subject them to treadmill test if required, or stress echocardiography if necessary, and you can try to identify the risk factors, and also you can go for finding out the severity of the coronary artery involvement by doing MRI angio or CT angio. While there is one group which is there in this where it mimics identical, that is ischemia because of non-occlusive coronary artery, where on angio again you don't get any occlusion of the coronary artery, but person is having a typical chest pain like a stable angina. So always keep this thing in mind. There is one group we call INOCA and MINOCA, and this particular group sometimes is missed because on an angio you get normal, but clinically they are suggestive of a stable coronary syndrome or acute coronary syndrome, and quite frequently they are missed. So keep that thing in mind. So if a person has got an ST elevation, troponin positive, think of an non-STEMI and STEMI. If there is an ST elevation, STEMI. If there is an ST depression, non-STEMI. And in presence of an STEMI, ST elevation, troponin positive, even if the coronary angiography is normal, sometimes it is reported as normal, non-occlusive coronary artery. Still think of one condition, that is myocardial infarction in presence of non-occlusive coronary artery. So non-occlusive, non-obstructive coronary artery can be a presentation as an acute MI and also as an ischemic heart disease. So this is that particular group, and in that always keep a differential diagnosis of myocarditis, epicardial myovascular involvement, myocardial disease, pulmonary embolism, and sometimes imbalance between oxygen supply and demand. We call type 2 MI. So keep this thing in mind, and for that you will have to do a non-invasive investigations or invasive investigations. So this you must try to differentiate from MINOCA, and that is very, very important. So always keep it in mind. So coronary artery stenosis is less than 50%. Treat as STEMI only, and if there is no coronary artery stenosis, then fulfillment of universal MI is there. Treat as MINOCA. treat that as Minoka. So that should be there. Now we are going through a one series now, one by one. So suppose there is a 50-year-old person presented to you with a retrosternal chest pain radiating to the left arm, jaw and neck. Yeah. Immediately your diagnosis will be towards ischemic heart disease. Now in that you will have to ask few number of questions. Exacerbation means aggravating factor, relieving factor. Is there any associated fever? Fever we are asking to rule out other condition like myocarditis, pericarditis, etc. which can also mimic identical like ischemic heart disease pain because you can have a radiation in that also. Type of chest pain, precipitating factor, etc. On auscultation, suppose I get pericardial rub, it will be more in favor of pericarditis. I get a murmur, it will be more in favor of a myocardial involvement. So you can try to get a good cardiovascular examination, respiratory examination, etc. And that will help you to differentiate some of the condition which is a differential diagnosis of a precordial chest pain. So one of the most common important is stable angina, unstable angina, then STEMI, non-STEMI, and also keep it in mind pericarditis. These are the three common which can mimic and you will have to differentiate from each other. I've already told you before that whenever you get a chest pain, get a good history, have a physical examination. ECG in case of a stable angina may not show you any STT changes, but in case of unstable angina and non-STEMI, you will get a ST depression. In a STEMI, you will have a ST elevation. Troponin will be negative in a person with a stable angina. It will be also negative in a case of an unstable angina, but it will be positive in case of a non-STEMI. So it will be positive in a non-STEMI, and it will be more elevated in a patient with a STEMI. So diagnosis, you have to differentiate from a good history, ECG and troponin into non-cardiac, unstable, non-STEMI and STEMI. You should be able to differentiate that. We already mentioned. So this is that particular. So in an unstable angina, ECG will show you ST depression in a non-STEMI and unstable angina, while ECG may be normal in case of a stable angina, while in a ST elevation will be seen in a patient with a STEMI. Troponin will be positive in case of a non-STEMI and STEMI. So try to identify that. And once you make a diagnosis with an ECG, always keep it in mind that you will have a one group we call as a ischemic MI. But there is no obstruction to coronary artery. That is because of a plaque rupture, coronary artery spasm we call as a vasospastic angina or a Prinzmetal angina, microvascular dysfunction, maybe because of thromboembolism. So do keep it in mind. This will give you all the criteria what are fitting with classical STEMI. But on a angiography, your coronary artery occlusion may be less than 50%. You should keep this thing in mind. At the same time, you can have a troponin positive, but there is no involvement of the coronary artery in case of myocarditis, Takotsubo and cardiomyopathies. You can have this particular, where you will have a STT changes, generalized STT changes, mainly in the form of a ST depression rather than an ST elevations. And in that, you will have a troponin positive, but angiography will be absolutely normal. So this fits with what we call as a troponin positive non-obstructive coronary artery disease. Troponin positive non-obstructive coronary artery disease. So you have to keep this thing in mind. And once in a while, in a case of a pulmonary embolism, septicemia, septic shock, and occasionally in case of a stroke. In a stroke, you will get ST depression with sharp T wave inversion, and good number of time it is mistaken as an acute MI, and this you will have to keep it in mind. Also in case of an acute septic shock and in pulmonary embolism also you can have changes. Occasionally, you can have other findings which are suggestive of a ischemic heart disease, maybe also positive in this group. So in this group also you can have a troponin positive. So keep this thing in mind. These are cardiac causes, but they are non-ischemic group, and these are extra cardiac causes. These are also non-ischemic group, but this is ischemic group. So if a person has got an ST changes, troponin positive, can be because of MI, can be because of Minoka, can be because of cardiac causes like myocarditis, Takotsubo, or we call stress cardiomyopathy, or other variety of cardiomyopathy. And in a case of an extra cardiac group, pulmonary embolism, septic shock, and acute stroke, particularly in case of an intracranial hemorrhage. So suppose if this is an ECG, what will you think of? You can see here, there is an ST elevation in lead 1, AVL, V2, V3, V4, V5, V6. V6 there is not much amount, but V1 to V5 definitely ST elevation in lead 1 and AVL. And what we call as a counter changes in lead 2, lead 3 and AVF. Reciprocal changes, ST depression. So this is acute anterior wall infarct, extensive anterior wall infarct. Before the event starts, usually ST segment is isoelectric, T wave is upright. When you get an hyperacute stage, you get the T wave tall, which is taller than half of the R wave, and it will be in a consecutive leads. Within few minutes, now you will start getting ST elevation with convexity upward and T wave in the opposite direction. Then Q wave will start appearing. ST segment will start coming down. T wave will be still inverted. Q wave will become further prominent. ST segment will become isoelectric. T wave will be still inverted. And when it is held, Q wave will persist. ST segment will be isoelectric and T wave will be upright. This is a typical pattern which you will see in a classical STEMI. This can be few days to few weeks. But if this persists for more than few months, then it favors ventricular aneurysm. So do not mix ventricular aneurysm with a fresh infarct. So keep that thing in mind. And in a ventricular aneurysm, troponin will be negative. So you must be aware of that condition also. So this is typical presentation of STEMI. We have already shown you normal. Initially, within few minutes, you will start getting a small Q wave with ST elevation, T wave in the opposite direction. Q wave will become deeper and deeper. T wave will be inverted. After few days, 2 weeks, Q wave will be deeper. ST segment isoelectric, T wave is still inverted. And after few months, you will have a ST segment isoelectric and T wave will become upright. We'll call this as a HILD, or we will call that as an old infarct. This already we have discussed in a STT changes, that in a septal infarct, these are the leads which are involved, these are reciprocal changes, which arteries involved, we have already discussed. So I am not discussing in detail again. Try to identify which area is involved, whether it is septal, anterior, lateral, high lateral, inferior, right ventricle, posterior, or we call a true posterior wall, or we call associated with other coronary artery territory, that is left coronary artery territory. You start getting changes in AVR. So that is in a left main stem. These are all things we have already discussed in detail in ST segment changes. So this is called localization of infarct. So a person who has got an ischemic heart disease may have an ST segment normal in an initial stage, or maybe elevated in a STEMI, or maybe depressed in a case of unstable angina or a non-STEMI. ST segment may be abnormal. So if it is abnormal, means it is elevated or depressed. You will have to find out in which lead it is. So it will help you to localize the lesion, which area is involved. So ST segment depression you get in a stable angina, unstable angina, non-STEMI. But ST elevation will be there with symptom signs and troponin positive. So always try to find out in a STEMI whether troponin is positive or not. If there is an ST elevation and person is having severe chest pain and troponin is negative, you think of variant angina. So in a case of a variant angina, you will have a troponin negative. Also, you can have a ST segment changes in the form of ST depression, but troponin will be positive. Already I have shown you one slide before. That can be there, what we call as a troponin positive, non-occlusive coronary artery disease. You have to keep that thing in mind because you will come across once in a while myocarditis, stress cardiomyopathy, pulmonary embolism, massive infarct in lung, also in case of a septic shock or in a case of what we call as a person who has got a major intracranial hemorrhage, etc. And also in a case of a Minoka. So you should keep that thing in mind. So ST elevation with troponin positive can be also other than acute MI. So keep that thing in mind. ST depression you can come across in LVH, RVH, bundle branch block or reciprocal changes in case of an STEMI. ST elevation is characteristic of a STEMI in variant angina. It is easy to differentiate the two in variant angina or we call as a coronary artery spasm. Symptom signs are like STEMI. ECG is also like STEMI, but troponin is negative. While in a STEMI, troponin is positive. So that is very easy way to differentiate. ST elevation in lead 2, lead 3 AVF, classical inferior wall MI. Now along with that, if you get changes in some other leads also, say like in V1, V2, you got an ST depression and R wave bigger than S wave, true posterior wall MI. And if you got an ST elevation in V1, V2, it will be suggestive of an RVMI. Then in that case, you will take V3R, V4R, V5R, V6R. And in V3R and V4R, if you get an ST elevation, it is in favor of RVMI. Also, if you get changes in along with lead 2, lead 3 and AVF, you get in V5, V6 ST elevation, then it is inferior-lateral wall MI. And if you get the changes along with L2, L3 AVF changes along with posterior wall MI, then it is called inferior posterior wall MI, but usually they don't use this particular terminology. Now if there is an ST elevation in lead 2, lead 3 and AVF and R wave is taller than S wave in V1, suspect true posterior wall MI or RVMI. And if there is an ST elevation in V1, V2, more in favor of a RVMI. And if there is an ST depression in V1, V2, it is more in favor of a true posterior wall MI, in which if you take V7, V8 and V9, there will be an ST elevation, which will be very characteristic of a true posterior wall MI. So R bigger than V1, R bigger than S in V1, ST depression or ST elevation, either of these two, true posterior wall MI or RVMI. But also keep it in mind, there is one condition which can show you slight ST changes in V1, V2, and that is Brugada syndrome, where you get a curved up ST segment and downsloping ST segment, and that will be seen in V1, V2, V3, and that is Brugada syndrome. You should keep that also in your mind. If there is an ST elevation from V1 to V6, it is an extensive anterior wall. If it is in V1 and V2, it is anteroseptal. If it is V3, V4, anterior wall. If it is V5, V6, lateral wall. If it is lead 1, AVL and V5, V6, anterolateral. All those terminology are being utilized. Depending upon which leads, you get the changes. While ST elevation in V5, V6 with lead 2, lead 3 AVF, inferolateral. And ST depression in V1 and V2, if you come across with changes in lead 2, lead 3 AVF, it is classical, more commonly seen a true positive wall MI. So this is just a repetition of what we have discussed in an ST segment changes. STEMI equivalent, you must keep it in mind. ST elevation in AVR will be suggestive of, we call as a atrial infarct, or in a case of a pericarditis. Along with that, you will get a PR segment up or down. In a Whelan syndrome, in V1, V2, you will get an ST depression with a T wave inversion, maybe biphasic. While in the case of a D Winter sign, you will have an STT changes, which is showing you a ST depression with a T wave upright in V2, V3, V4, mainly in V2, V3. In Segorba's criteria, we have already told you that you will have a changes in chest lids, particularly in V1. In V1, you will have what we call as a ST elevation more than 5 small square, or ST depression more than 1 small square, or in V5, V6, you have got an ST elevation more than 1 small square. These are in favor of Segorba's criteria to detect a presence of acute MI if a person has got fresh LBBB or an old LBBB. But this can be helped by, sorry, here I is missing. So it will be supported by if a person is unstable. If a person is unstable, always it is in favor of MI. It can be supported by even echocardiography. So if a person has got a severe chest pain characteristic suggestive of an MI, and if there is an LBBB, he is unstable, plus troponin is positive, and if echocardiography shows regional wall abnormality, it is in favor of an MI. And also I have discussed regarding a posterior wall MI, you should be able to differentiate that very easily. And RVMI also. And these are the difference between acute pericarditis, MI and early repolarization. Just to summarize in a short, in acute pericarditis, there is a J point elevation, we call it a concave elevation. In early repolarization also there is a concave elevation, while in a myocardial infarction it is a convex. Q wave will be seen only in case of an STEMI, and that is Q wave will be seen in a STEMI only, not in a non-STEMI. While Q wave will not be seen in a pericarditis or the early repolarization. Reciprocal changes will be present only in case of an MI, will not be present in pericarditis or early repolarization. In a myocardial infarction, it will show you the area, means consecutive leads. While in acute pericarditis, it will be in limb leads as well as the precordial leads. In an early repolarization, it will be mainly in a precordial leads. STT changes will be very characteristics in a case of an acute pericarditis, that is we call as a concave upward, while in a case of a myocardial infarction, it is a convex upwards. We don't calculate the ST to T ratio in lead 6, V6. Usually it is more than 0.25 in acute pericarditis and early repolarization. It is less than 0.25. Usually we don't try to calculate this. There is a loss of R wave voltage in case of a myocardial infarction, because in case of an anterior wall infarct in a chest leads, the R wave starts not from V1 lead. If you see an R wave in V1, V2, it is more in favor of an RVMI or a true positive wall MI. Usually there is a loss of R wave voltage. Loss of R wave voltage. And PR segment depression will be seen in an acute pericarditis only. But PR segment changes, and particularly PR segment changes, will be seen very classical in case of an AVR lead. While in a case of a myocardial infarction, you don't see a PR segment depression or elevation. At the same time, also in early repolarization, you don't see any PR changes. Once you make the diagnosis of an STEMI, or you make a diagnosis of non-STEMI, or you suspect a person is having an acute MI, MINOCA, the treatment does not change. Bed rest, oxygen, analgesics. Usually we say a pre-hospital thrombolysis is a must. Person should be given antiplatelets in the form of a, we call 600 milligram of aspirin, soluble aspirin, with 80 milligram of atorvastatin plus 300 to 600 milligram of clopidogrel. That has to be given. Good number of times they are also put on an anticoagulants and antithrombin. And as early as possible, within a window period, we call door to balloon time. Person should be sent to a center where PCI is possible, and person should be subjected to angiography followed by a balloon angioplasty, or we call as a person should be subjected to the stenting, or we call PCI, percutaneous coronary intervention. And if that is not indicated, then person may be a candidate for CABG, which can be by open or a close. Nowadays there is even a possibility of a robotic CABG surgery. You have to think in terms of a treatment of complications. Whatever complication takes place because of an acute MI, that should be treated simultaneously. Now once the person is stabilized, you have to go for the secondary prevention, tertiary prevention, and post-infarct care. All this is a part and parcel of a treatment in a case of an acute MI. This is what we call in general a management of an ischemic heart disease, what we have discussed before. Go through your leisure time. This is an algorithm which you should follow. If a person comes to with a chest pain and you are suspecting a person is having either an acute coronary syndrome or person is having a STEMI, so try to think in that term. So you will have to differentiate stable, unstable, non-STEMI and STEMI. And usually this is the thing what we do. We investigate, take a classical history is there. ECG you will have a STT changes. In unstable you will have a ST depression, while here you will have a ST elevation. Cardiac marker will be positive in case of a non-STEMI and STEMI. It will be negative in a stable angina and unstable angina, and also it will be negative in case of a variant angina. Risk identification should be done. Try to identify as early as possible, and then you try to give them aspirin, clopidogrel, even stabilize the plaque by giving a full dose of what we call as a statin. Person can be put on an anticoagulant if you are suspecting a plaque rupture. In case of unstable angina, anti-ischemic therapy. So these are all the things which can be done in a high group. And in a case of a STEMI, person should be thrombolized followed by primary PCI should be done. So primary PCI is a treatment for STEMI and non-STEMI. Facilitated PCI can be also done. Or if a person is having a severe complications like acute left ventricular failure, you can go even for a rescue PCI. And if PCI is contraindicated, you can go for a CABG. So this is that particular, usually this is that what we call is in how much time you should send him to for a PCI. That is within 5 minutes of a symptom, you should make a diagnosis clinically. Then emergency call should be done. Send him for the investigation. ECG should be taken, 12 lead ECG should be taken at an spot only. And if possible, pre-hospital fibrinolysis should be done. And he should be sent within 30 minutes as early as possible to the nearby hospital. If PCI is not available, then do a fibrinolysis within 30 minutes and then try to send him to the PCI hospital. within 90 minutes. And so there is a very narrow window period. And total ischemic time, that is we call 120 minutes, 90 days plus 30 days. So as early as possible, all these things should be done to prevent mortality and morbidity. They also use the word MONA, HBAS, morphine, oxygen, nitroglycerin, aspirin, clopidogrel, injectable heparin or low molecular weight heparin, beta blocker, ACE inhibitor, and statin. So that is M, O, nitroglycerin, aspirin, and clopidogrel. H for heparin, or we call low molecular weight heparin, B for beta blocker, A for ACE inhibitor, and S for statin. These are what should be the treatment in a person with a suspected STEMI, non-STEMI, diagnosed STEMI, non-STEMI, etc. And even in a case of a what we call is an unstable angina. And this is what is very important. If you get an ST changes in an AVR lead with PR segment changes, do suspect acute pericarditis. And once in a while, it can be a finding in a case of a what we call is a atrial infarcts. So these two conditions should be kept in mind. So in a pericarditis, you get a concavity upward in a limb leads as well as the chest leads. So you can see in lead 1, lead 2, then AVL. You can see also in case of V3, V3, V4, V5, V6. This is a J point elevation and with a concavity upward. So when you get such, and it will be troponin negative, pericardial rub may be present. Do keep it in mind, this can be pericarditis. Now there will be another group of person. History, vital data, or etc. you have taken, and clinically you make a diagnosis that it is extracardiac. How you make the diagnosis will be going through. And ECG is not conclusive. Troponin CPKMB is negative. Echo CVS completely normal. You don't have to subject him to angio. So in which group? A person who comes to with a chest pain with fever, cough. And whenever he comes with a fever with cough, you know it is respiratory. Maybe pneumonia or acute exacerbation of COPD, etc. In that you will need CBC, X-ray chest, sputum examination. Or person comes with retrosternal burning pain, vomiting, pain aggravated by food, pain aggravated by vomiting. He will need upper GI endoscopy. Person comes with local tenderness, swelling, and it is a swelling at the costochondral junction. Diagnosis is costochondritis. Or person comes with chronic chest pain, multiple symptoms, repeated examination for EKG, troponin, CPKMB, echo, angio, all are normal. It is anxiety, or we sometimes use the word cardiac neurosis. So now we are going one by one. A 30-year-old person comes to you with a sudden chest pain on the right side. There is no radiation. You get the history of fever, cough, hemoptysis, loss of weight, etc. And on auscultation, try to look for the respiratory findings in the form of crackles, rhonchi, pleural rub, decreased air entry, all those things. So you suspect now it is more likely to be respiratory involvement. One, pulmonary embolism, which can be an acute emergency. Tension pneumothorax can be also an acute life-threatening emergency. And even pneumonia can be a life-threatening emergency if it is extensive bilateral pneumonia. So best thing is X-ray chest, which will help you to differentiate all the three conditions. This will be in favor of a pneumonia consolidation. This is again consolidation. You can see a air bronchogram. Try to find out a risk factor for thromboembolism. Look at the clinical features depending upon the size, fainting episodes, collapse, apprehension, severe dyspnea, pleuritic pain, person will have hemoptysis, cough, shortness of breath. you approach according to the algorithm for ruling out pulmonary embolism. In a pneumothorax, you will get a radiolucent area, and trachea, if it is shifted to opposite side, it will be in favor of a tension pneumothorax. So try to look for this is tension pneumothorax. It is an emergency. So try to identify tension pneumothorax and pulmonary embolism, too common, and easily it can be identified by doing an X-ray chest, etc. In case of a vascular etiology, a female, 33 years old female, during her pregnancy presented with a severe sudden onset of severe chest pain radiating to the back between the shoulder. She has got tearing pain or ripping pain, and there is a precipitating factor in the form of she is hypertensive and she was having a connective tissue disorders. Immediately this gives you an idea, clue, a rupture of or dissection, aortic dissection. Always keep it in mind. So thoracic aorta dissection, or we can call aortic aneurysm dissection. And one rare condition we call is a sickle cell crisis. Do keep it in mind. In a aortic dissection, very commonly the person is always hypertensive. There is a history of atherosclerosis or what we call as collagen tissue disorders like Ehlers-Danlos, or even a person might have a Marfan syndrome. Non-specific aortic aneurysm may be present. Coarctation of aorta may be a disorder which may be previously collagen disorders like Marfan or Ehlers-Danlos. Fibromuscular dysplasia may be present, or previous aortic surgery like CABG or aortic valve replacement has been done. Good number of time during a third trimester, during a delivery time, traumatic injury, or very rarely iatrogenic. And the person will present with a tearing pain, abrupt onset, sudden collapse. Usually person will be in a shock stage. Very frequently they are having Marfan syndromes. BP will be hypotension. Even you can get a shock stage. And very peculiar finding, asymmetry in the pulse in both upper extremity or upper and lower extremity difference. Sometimes they can even have an MI. They will have a paraplegia if it is dissecting down involving the spinal arteries, or person can get even a acute abdominal pain. Person can come to with an AKI also, and even lower limb ischemia if dissection goes towards the bifurcation of aorta. Among GI tract causes, GERD, esophageal rupture we call Bohorev syndrome, pancreatitis, and peptic ulcer perforation. These are some of the. Among these three conditions are dangerous one, which can be life-threatening, but very easy to identify. Person will have abdominal pain, or sometime in a esophageal rupture maybe retrosternal pain. You will have an abdominal finding very frequently in pancreatitis and peptic ulcer. In this particular condition, you will have other findings, and it can be easily approached by what we call as an abdominal ultrasound. So pain is often exacerbated by what we call as alcohol, aspirin, and food. Lying down, it is frequently associated with vomiting, relieved by antacids. So it will give you a clue that it is more in favor of an abdominal. And person will present with a severe chest pain, shock stage in case of a Bohorev, hematemesis, sorry, not hemoptysis, hematemesis. Because of leak of air from esophagus into the mediastinum, you will have a mediastinal crunch or Hammond's sign. You will have subcutaneous emphysema. It will be also diagnosed by getting an X-ray chest. You will have a continuous diaphragm sign. You can have a pleural effusion, pneumothorax. You will have a pneumomediastinum signs, etc. Esophageal rupture, Bohorev syndromes is quite common in a person who is undergoing some procedures. So this could be one of the condition, esophageal rupture. You should keep it in mind. The last group, which is least dangerous one, is costochondritis, or we call traumatic injury to the chest wall, like a blunt trauma. In that you have got a localized pain, or we call pinpointing or finger pointing pain. Local tenderness present, and person invariably will have swelling, redness, signs of inflammation like redness, swelling, tenderness. warmness that will be present. So, and it is exacerbated by active movement or a passive movement. Local tenderness is present invariably. So, very easy to diagnose. One another condition you should keep it in mind is herpes zoster, which can also give rise to a chest pain depending upon where it is involved. And last, you should not forget is psychological, or we call hysterical, or we call cardiac neurosis. This is typical herpes zoster. So I end my lecture here. I hope this will be very helpful. We are going to discuss regarding a case discussion which are presenting with a chest pain in subsequent lecture.